Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going through my Letterboxd diary and talking about everything I watched in April. If you're new here, I'm Emma and this is Sketchy Ed, where I discuss and review films in the horror and thriller genre. I love all things dark, creepy and disturbing, so if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit subscribe to keep updated on my channel. Okay, let's jump in. So I started off the month by rewatching Fresh. I've done a review on this one and I spoke about this on my last Everything I Watched video. I really enjoyed this film. I had to rewatch it with one of my friends. Just such a great film and an awesome way to kick off the month. So I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. I then rewatched Project X, kind of switching gears a little bit. This film I actually really love. Me and my husband have rewatched this so many times over the last 10 years. It's a found footage film, which I'm a big fan of. I love the found footage subgenre, horror or otherwise in this case. I'm actually going to be doing a video on 10 found footage horror and thriller films that are worth your time. Just thought I would let you guys know to look out for that video once I do release it. But yeah, this one's a really fun one. The music in it is awesome. It definitely makes you want to party. So yeah, this is just a fun one. I recommend you check it out if you haven't already. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. I then watched Don't Breathe 2. Really wasn't a fan of this one. I really enjoyed the first Don't Breathe film. I thought it was super suspenseful. It had me at the edge of my seat the whole time. I really liked the disturbing twist at the end. But this one here, I don't like how they've kind of switched the whole script in a way and you're kind of rooting for the blind man. It didn't really sit well with me and I couldn't really buy into it. That being said, it's quite violent and the special effects are pretty well done. If you're a big fan of that kind of thing, it may be worth watching. But honestly, I just didn't really enjoy it. I gave it a 2 out of 5. I then watched Caviar. This one I've had on my watch list for a while now since it was released and I finally got around to watching it this month or last month. I thought that it was super creepy, super strange, really tense. It definitely puts off a very strange vibe or strange atmosphere and you kind of trying to figure out what's happening the whole time. It has quite a compact cast and I think all of the cast members did a really good job. There are so many creepy little scenes and images in this film. One of the creepiest parts for me was that little bunny puppet that you can see in this little picture here. I thought it was just super freaky. As far as creepy dolls and toys go, this one probably takes the cake for me. If I came across this, there is no way that I would be staying in that house. Not that the guy really had a choice. This film is mostly about its atmosphere and how it makes you feel while you're watching it. I don't think it had a super strong plot or storyline, but yeah, it's still worth a watch. It's still a solid film. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I then watched Rec for the first time and oh my goodness, I absolutely loved it. I've seen the American remake Quarantine a couple of years ago and while I did like that film, this one, it's just a level above. It is just so well done. I love the performances, especially from our main actress, which we can see here. She did a great job of being super convincing in her performance. Another major highlight for me was the ending, which is awesome when the best part of a film is the ending. It definitely makes it feel like it was worth the time that you took to watch it. The ending is super creepy. Like the imagery is just nightmare fuel. I don't remember if the ending of Quarantine was the same as this one, which is problematic in itself that I don't quite remember what happened in Quarantine. Whereas this one is fresh in my mind and I really want to rewatch this. It's just so good. So this one I gave a 4 out of 5. Amazing. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. I then watched Halloween. This is a 2007 Rob Zombie version of the film, and it might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually enjoyed this better than the original. This is my first experience of Rob Zombie's work, and after seeing this, it does make me want to watch some of his other stuff. I found it really interesting that they kind of showed a backstory of how Michael Myers in this universe became who he is. I loved some of the imagery. I especially loved the scene where you could see all of the masks that he's created in his cell. I thought that was super creepy, just really cool. This is definitely more explicit than the original Halloween in terms of its language. It's very sexual in parts. It's also super violent. Some of these things are why I do like it better than the original. In my last Everything I Watched video, I discussed how I didn't hate the film, the original Halloween, John Carpenter's, but it was just kind of meh for me. I just found it quite bland, and I think this version, at least, I don't know, it was just super interesting, super dark still. Although it was corny in parts, I thought that it was still part of the fun. But yeah, I mean, tell me, is there anyone else who feels the same as me? Did you enjoy this version of Halloween better than John Carpenter's? I feel like a little bit of an outlier when it comes to this opinion. I know that everyone loves the original, but I just found that this one spoke to me more, and I am actually excited to check out some of Rob Zombie's other works. So if anyone has any suggestions of what I should watch next in his catalogue, let me know in the comments. But yeah, for this one, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I then watched Scream 4. This was the first time that I've seen this film. I've seen the original Scream movie a million times, love that film. I watched Scream 2 and Scream 3 for the first time only, I think it was a year or a year and a half ago, and honestly I just found them kind of like, they're not great. They weren't terrible films or anything, but I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan. So I kind of put off watching this one, and then I've watched this one now so I can watch the most recent Scream film that's come out. For this one, I liked better than Scream 2 and Scream 3. I really like the cast in this. I really like Emma Roberts as an actress in general, so that was cool seeing her in this film. Neve Campbell as Sydney, our ultimate final girl, is super badass as usual. I mean, what else would we expect from her? But yeah, I like this one. I gave it a 3 out of 5, and I'm excited to watch the new Scream, hopefully this month. I then watched Bad Trip. So again, this is switching gears a bit. This is a comedy. I didn't know what to expect when watching this, and I absolutely loved it. It is so silly, and there was parts of this that really make you cringe. I definitely didn't think they were going to go as far as they did, and it was just hilarious. If you're a fan of Jackass and Bad Grandpa and films within that kind of realm, then you'll absolutely love this film. I love films and TV shows where they're pretty much pulling pranks on the public. In this one, it's very much like Bad Grandpa, where there's this clear storyline between the characters, but all of this is taking place in public, so it's just so good. I watched this one on Netflix, and like I said, big fan of anything that's in this kind of ballpark. Just a little side note, is there anyone else who's a fan of Impractical Jokers? I absolutely love that television series, and it recently got taken off Australia's Netflix, so I'm pretty sad about that. But yeah, I really like this. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I then watched The Houses October Built. So I watched this one here for kind of research for my upcoming found footage video. I put a post on Twitter asking what people's favorite found footage films were, and this one was a recurring one that just kept coming up. So I thought I'd give it a try. I didn't not like this film. I thought it was really super creepy. I definitely put myself in the position of the characters that we were following, and if that was me, oh my goodness, I could not deal. What let down this film for me was the ending. I didn't really like the last part of the film. I think it was weak. I definitely think they could have made it way more creepier. I just thought it was kind of anticlimactic, but on a whole, I did like the concept, and it's probably a film that I would rewatch, especially at Halloween time. I myself have never been to a haunt. In Australia, I think it's something that's just started to kind of happen in recent years. When I was growing up, this was not a thing, but as Halloween gets more popular here, we're getting more and more of these kind of things. So I'm thinking that I'm going to go to my first haunt experience this year, and watching films like this definitely makes me uneasy about it, but I guess that's all in the fun of it. If you haven't seen this film before, I mean, I think it's worth a watch just for the creepiness that it's able to achieve. Maybe go in not expecting like a super strong plot, and yeah, you probably will enjoy it. So I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5. I then watched Choose or Die. So I actually did a review for this one, so if you haven't checked it out, I'll link it above. Unfortunately, I wasn't a fan of this film. I think I might have went in with my expectations too high, but that being said, I didn't go in with high expectations. I just went in expecting a half decent film, and honestly, I felt super let down. There are quite a few people who do enjoy this film though. On my review, I've seen some people comment that they did enjoy this, which is awesome. I'm glad that they found enjoyment out of it. But if you do go into this film, I would say don't expect a super strong storyline. To me, that was the biggest downfall for this film, the writing. So yeah, I'll just leave it as that, short and sweet. If you want to check out more of my thoughts on this film, then you can check out the review. So this one I gave a 1.5 out of 5. I then watched Identity. This was a first time watch for me. It's been on my watch list for quite a few years now after one of our friends recommended it to me. First off, I loved the rainy weather in this film. Throughout the whole film, it's heavily raining, and I just love that in movies. And I know I'm not the only one. It's just such a mood. This one was released in 2003, and it definitely feels dated when you're watching it. Just some of the language that they use, like just kind of how there's a lot of shaming of a certain character's profession. There's also some weird cutaways on the film where, especially at the beginning, where they're kind of introducing all the characters, and it definitely made it feel like it was nearly 20 years old. Overall, I did enjoy this film. I did kind of figure out the twist just before it was revealed, but that didn't take away from it. I mean, I thought it was pretty clever, although, I don't know, ultimately it's quite unrealistic, but still really fun watch. It has a pretty awesome cast. For example, we've got here John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet, Alfred Molina, Claire Duvall. So yeah, you can see that there's a pretty awesome cast here. If you haven't seen this, I would recommend it. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I then rewatched for like the billionth time Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. For those of you that don't know, I am a massive, massive Harry Potter fan. I myself am a proud Hufflepuff. I grew up reading the books. I grew up watching the films. It's probably my most watched films of all time. While I was pregnant last year, I watched the 8 films probably 3 times all over. I would just do marathons back to back constantly. They're a real comfort for me. But yeah, I won't go on too much about this film. I'm sure everyone is aware of the films. If you haven't watched these before, like my husband, that's a whole nother thing. If you haven't watched these films, then I definitely recommend it. I gave this a perfect 5 out of 5. I just can't fault it. It is my childhood and I just love it so much. I then watched The Cellar. So I watched this on Shudder. I was pleasantly surprised by this film. I thought it was super dark. The cinematography was just gorgeous. I just think it was well shot. It definitely had some, I mean, in my opinion, like original elements to it. It's essentially a haunted house kind of film with kind of a twist, which I don't know, I thought it was clever. I love anything to do with symbols, things like that in film. Like I really like that type of stuff. So this was right up my alley. Where it kind of fell short for me was, I can't actually quite pinpoint it. I think it was towards the end, and I'm not sure why. I definitely want to give this another watch just so I can formulate my thoughts more clearly, but I thought this film was super strong for 3/4 of it, and then the last quarter kind of let it down. But I think it's definitely worth a watch. It's actually based off a short film called The 10 Steps, which is on YouTube. So this is kind of like the feature length adaptation from the same director. If you're a fan of haunted house mystery films, then this will be right up your alley. It's also set in the gorgeous countryside of Ireland. So, I mean, visually, this film is an absolute treat. And just before I move on, it does star Alicia Cuthbert. I've completely butchered that, but it was just really cool to see her in this role, and I think she did an awesome job. So definitely check it out. It's on Shudder. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I then rewatched Matilda. This one is definitely a childhood favorite of mine. I only just realized on this rewatch that it was directed by Danny DeVito, which I thought was super cool. I think he did a really good job. This film is just nostalgia. I remember I used to love this as a child, and I actually used to try and make things move with my eyes all the time. This is such a wholesome film. Absolutely love it. But yeah, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. I then watched The Devil's Doorway. So this one came on my radar from, I'm not sure whose account it was, but it was on Twitter. I'd never heard of it, but I saw this movie poster and it piqued my interest straight away. I watched this on Tubi, so if you haven't seen it, it's on there. I thought that parts of this were really effective, like super creepy. This one is another found footage film. It has strong themes in religion and possession, and there were some really effective scenes that I thought were done really well. Super creepy, but I don't know, it just didn't quite stick the landing for me. I think it probably comes down to the fact that this is not an original film or concept, and I felt like I've seen pretty much all of this before, so I did feel kind of bored watching it. It's probably a film I wouldn't watch again, although it was well done. It just, yeah, I just kind of was bored, and it wasn't even a very long film. It's only 76 minutes long, but it did feel like it dragged a bit. So yeah, so that kind of reflected my score. I gave this a 2.5 out of 5. I then watched The Medium. This one I saw was on Shudder, and I'd never heard of it before, and I really enjoyed this. This film is set in Thailand, and it focuses on shamanism. This is another found footage film, which is in the form of a mockumentary. From the get-go, I was hooked. It felt real. The performances were just phenomenal. They honestly didn't feel like performances. They just seemed so legit. I especially like the character Nim, who is the person that we're following throughout this mockumentary, who is a shaman. This film, in kind of a nutshell, is a possession film. The major difference between this one and The Devil's Doorway is that this one just feels super fresh. The fact that it's set in Asia, in a different culture, it was just so interesting. And listening to some of their beliefs around, I guess, shamanism, possession, all of that, I just really enjoyed it. This film also, in parts, is super extreme. Like, it touches on a lot of taboo subjects. I don't want to give too much away. It definitely has a lot going on when you're watching it. There were parts where I was like, did they really just say that? Is that what's happening here? Like, this film is also super creepy. There's parts of it that are very like Paranormal Activity. I definitely take my hat off to the directors. They weren't shy. They definitely knew what they wanted to achieve, and they really went 100%. Before I move on from this one, I also want to give a little shout out. Once I finished this film, I then listened to a podcast episode discussing this film on the /her podcast, and I thought it was really fun listening to their discussion on the film. So definitely check it out if you've seen this film. It's a lot of fun getting their take on it. But yeah, this one's on Shudder. Really recommend watching this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I then watched Deadwear. Again, more found footage. This one is definitely low budget. It's about 2 friends in 1999 who are on webcam playing this internet game together. It definitely gave me nostalgic vibes because I've definitely played games like this before in the past. So I found that really interesting. Where it fell down is that it kind of had a, I don't know, weak plot, kind of silly, but I did still think it was kind of fun to watch. There was also some questionable acting, especially towards the end. Like, there's a part where there is a character who's screaming, and I don't know, I just was like, oh, what is this? But still fun. I mean, I don't know if I would recommend people watch this. If you have nostalgia to those type of games that I'm talking about, and I haven't described it in a really good way, but it's essentially those games where you've got the screen is just showing a still image of a room, and then you click on objects in the room trying to get, you know, a prompt or a question, or you click on doors to go through them, that type of thing. Which, I mean, if that speaks to your nostalgia, then you probably will find enjoyment in this film. I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5. I then watched Don't F With Cats for the first time. I didn't watch it when it was kind of blowing up a few years ago, mostly out of fear of what I was going to see in the animal cruelty part of it. Although you don't explicitly see what's happening on the videos, you do hear the audio. It is really upsetting to hear and to watch. But all in all, I thought that this documentary series was amazing. Like, I think they did an awesome job presenting the facts, and I honestly, I don't know, I'm speechless now. I just think it's crazy what unfolded, and just super sad and super disturbing, and I mean super clever as well for the internet sleuths who kind of track this person down. I definitely recommend watching this if you haven't seen it before. If you're into true crime, this one is definitely interesting to say the least. But yeah, this one here I gave a 4 out of 5. Super disturbing, but yeah, like I said, super well done. I then finished the month with watching Everything Everywhere All at Once. I watched this one in the cinemas, which was really cool. This film I really enjoyed. I thought the performances were awesome. I just thought it was so unique. I've never seen anything quite like this film. I mean, I've seen films that take on the idea of like the multiverse, but never presented like this. It was just so bizarre. It was just colorful. It was crazy. It was touching. It was all of the emotions. It was everything. It did end up making me cry, and I was just thinking, how is a scene with 2 rocks making me cry? I never thought that this would happen. So interestingly enough, on the flip side, my husband absolutely hated this movie. After the movie had finished and we were walking out of the cinemas, he said that was the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. So vastly different experiences. So yeah, that was that was interesting. But this is super funny, super heartwarming, super weird, very weird. If you haven't seen this one yet, I'll be like the masses and just tell you that you have to see it. It's definitely a experience that you've not experienced before, that's for sure. So for this one, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Now I'm just going to shout out what my favorite film of the month was and my least favorite. So for this, I'm only going to include first time watchers. I'm not going to include Harry Potter, for example, in this. So for my favorite film of the month, I'm going to cheat again and I'm going to say 2. So that was Rec and The Medium. I absolutely love these films. Funnily enough, they're both found footage. I mean, not that funny, I guess, since half the films I watched this month were found footage. But yeah, definitely check them both out if you haven't seen them before. For least favorite film of the month, I have to say Choose or Die. I really wasn't a fan. Again, I've done a review on this, so if you want to kind of delve deeper and see why that was, then you can check that out. Anyway, that was everything I watched in the month of April. I hope to have my found footage video out this month, so keep an eye out for that one. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.